Good. Hello, my name is Pisces Palmist. I am the online palmistry reader reading the hands of complete unknowns, unraveling entire lives from the hands alone via email. In this reading, I will be looking at the hands of a 42-year-old male who would like to know much more about his career options and the possibility of purchasing a house. I have four pretty clear images of the fronts and the backs of his hands. I'm just looking at the overall shape of the fingertips. I'm getting fairly mixed vibes. I'm pretty much practical and analytical mix here. So, as always, we begin with the hands and no idea as to who this person is. And all I really know about this person is their question and also their date of birth, which I've come to a conclusion already about a few things in terms of numerology. I'm going to be discussing in a little bit how that applies to this palm reading, how it kind of ties together, how the numerology ties in with the palmistry. But first of all, I'm going to look at the chirognomy of this person's hand, their hand shape, the fingers as well, and what this tells us about their personality, their characteristics, their skills, and who they are psychologically, their perceptions, their worldview. And as I say, this is certainly a mixed hand, I would say. You can see the fingertip of Jupiter here is conic. The fingernail is rounded. Um, Saturn is somewhat more spatulate, and that stands for action, although it's a tiny bit more sort of squared off. Apollo is also spatulate, and again, that stands for action. And then Mercury on the same right hand is again a bit more sort of conic. I mean, all in all, they're rectangular nails, but they kind of splay outwards towards the end. And that really kind of shows us, the need to prove with physical action and effort, particularly at Saturn here. And Saturn, the reason why the fate line, the career line, the duty line, if you like, sometimes referred to as the luck line, it drives up towards the finger of Saturn is because this is a place of our purpose and what drives us in life, our destiny, our fate. So to have a greater sense of action when it comes to all things Saturnian, the inevitable time, planning, duty, that sense of right and wrong, and our societal contribution, it shows this person is a hard worker. Now, I can already see some differences in the left and the right hand when it comes to the chirology, the lines in the hands. Now, I'm going to get around to explaining what this means and how this ties in with the chirognomy and what we're seeing in the shape of the hands and the fingers. But first of all, what do the fingers tell us about what this person is thinking and feeling? Well, the left hand shows us what's internal. And as far as natural finger leanings go, this image isn't a great, shall we say, reliable witness because the hand is in an unnatural pose. However, there is a correlation between the left and the right, and there is something to be said for the way in which Jupiter and Saturn are spaced out, as well as Apollo and Mercury. Apollo and Saturn are very sort of upright in their purpose, in their alignment. Particularly Apollo is very aligned here. The fact that Jupiter stands alone, separate from society and traditional values, and how we see ourselves fitting in society really shows us this person, um, feels very sort of individual, very unique. It leans towards the thumb here, showing the kind of eagerness to make great change and to impact on the world around them, to utilize who they are as a person, represented by the thumb, in terms of, the self in conjunction with their view of themselves. Jupiter is the finger of the self, ego, ambition, judgment, authority, decision making. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this person is a mixed hand, partly because of the mixture of the combinations of the fingertips, but also the hand shape is somewhere in between practical and analytical. If you're unsure of what I mean by that, check out my website. I have detailed 12 different hand types. The practical hand and the analytical hand are two pretty different hand types. There are some similarities. Analytical hands are a lot more, as the name suggests, a lot more in their own minds. They're quite sort of sensitive and intelligent and much more emotional. Whereas practical hands are very firm and fair, very grounded, logical and down to earth. So too are, analytical hands are also logical, but there's a much more um, emotional aspects intertwined with their sense of understanding. This person is certainly someone who processes and breaks things down, but there is a strong practical and logical aspect to this person with the very square feature of their palm. The fingers themselves, I would say, are only just on the short side, but they are very knotted here. And the straightness of the headline here shows someone who's very level-headed. Um, the the lack of lines in the hands themselves as well really shows us someone who is, again, actually, this kind of demonstrates what the straightness of the headline, the overall straightness of the headline is showing us, and that is someone with actually quite a great level of clarity, level-headedness. There's no sign here of anxiety or overthinking. There isn't any kind of obstruction to the mental um, processing and thinking. Um, However, the knots in the fingers here, Saturn and Apollo in particular, does slow down this thinking. It's not a blockage as such. It shows a greater sense of analysis, and I would think this person's got quite a sort of critical eye. There's a good mind for numbers as well. There's a strong length to both Apollo and Saturn's middle phalanges, and that's always seen on the hands of those who have strong mathematical abilities. This, in conjunction with the length and straightness of the headline, really shows us someone who is very able to plan, think ahead, and as I'd say, partly analytical, intertwined with practical. This is someone who's a planner, a lateral thinker, and probably able to utilize data in a way, they're able to make a plan with this. So already, we're combining the chirognomy with the chirology in order to sort of draw a conclusion as to who this person is and what their skill set is. The other thing I've noticed about this person's hand is the strong angle on the thumb here. You can see it more clearly on the back of the hand here. Just look at the strength of this angle of time, otherwise known as the angle of proficiency. And the reason why it has two names really is because the meanings there are kind of blurred and merged in with each other. The sense of timing with this person is strong, and timing, routine, um, order, structure. Again, these are very sort of practical elements, very grounded, logical, um, and very sort of earthy elements. But as well as that, person with this often has an excellent sense of timing, rhythm. They probably had a very good natural body clock. And if it weren't for they're very optimistic and I would actually say um, creative and a sort of flexible personality, adaptable personality. This person would be quite rigid if they had very squared off fingertips. If we saw that as well as everything else we're seeing here, we'd see someone who's, who'd wake up at the same time every day, and eat the same things every day. This person has a lot more um, fluidity to their nature and sense of adaptability intertwined with their practical and logical thinking. I have noticed on the fingertips there is a whirl on Apollo. Can't quite see it in this image here, I have opened up this image on my phone, and for some reason it's much more clear on my phone, and I could see there's a whirl fingerprint on Apollo, whereas the other fingerprints have loops, and this really shows an adaptability, a sense of flexibility and fluidity um, in terms of their perceptions and how they receive information. There's less rigidity seen elsewhere in the hand, so that really sort of balances this person out quite nicely. But in terms of their talents and their um, artistic and sort of creative abilities, there's a real unique perspective here. So being that we have quite a numerical mind, there's a sense of creativity. The Apollo fingertip itself is spatulate, stands for action. You know, numbers, creativity. I'm instantly drawn to the potential for someone who's quite musical. And now to kind of follow on from that thought, I'm looking at the fate line here, the career line, and immediately I would look for a fate line that stems from Luna, and it does just about. Find it interesting that the middle two fingers lean together, but Jupiter, their sense of themselves, their idea of themselves is very far apart. So whilst they're able to and willing to, and actually okay with working with others in a group in order to, pay the bills in their day job, what it is that they want to do in terms of their career is very separate. Their idea of who they are and themselves, and likely the way they see others seeing themselves is very different. They have a very, I don't want to say unique perspective of themselves, but that's not necessarily right. But they are, there's a sense here of not fitting in somehow, not necessarily a loner, but someone who is not feeling like they're just not fitting in with what society is and wants and needs. Notice on the right hand, the two middle fingers are a little bit closer together, whereas on the left, there's a bit more distance between them. So there is something of a loner aspect about them. And really, this ties back in with that kind of mixed hands, the composite hand, if you like, in my 12 hand classification method, or David Brandon Jones's rather, I've poached it, is always someone who is um, quite complicated, a bit of an oddball potentially, and has such an eclectic variety of skills and personality traits that they often find they don't really quite fit in anywhere into any one social group or industry within society. And unless they can really sort of harness their strange varieties of skills and characteristics and group them together in a way that's very constructive and productive, they won't really ever feel very fulfilled and satisfied with who they are and how they fit in with the world. And so this person, that kind of sense of not feeling like they kind of fit in so much makes sense here with the overall individual characteristics we're seeing in the hands. And notice as well that logic is significantly longer than willpower. It's sort of wasted here. This is certainly someone who has strong, as I say, logical. They're highly logical, but there's a strong diplomatic skills. Mercury, I love the development of Mercury. This person is, I would say, honest and has a real strength of expressive skills. It's not necessarily that they are um, loud and outspoken, just because we see the clarity in the Mercury finger. When I say that, what I mean is the width of it in conjunction with the other fingers is strong. The length of it is a good length. It is in no way crooked. I think this person does have strong in some aspect. There's quite a strong verbal skill here, vocal skill at least. Maybe this ties in with some musical skill. Maybe the strength of Mercury here, the development of all things expressive and communicative, are due to their potential musical skill. Funny because when I look at the palms of the hands themselves, I see, as I say, a mixture between practical and analytical. But then when I look at the backs of the hands, I see a much more sort of philosophic. And again, this coincides with my conclusion. They are very composite. They're very mixed hand. And so all we can really do is determine from the key um, traits we see in the hand and try to conclude from those signs together. In other words, there are no easy shortcuts with this palm reading. So in terms of career options, I would certainly think that this is someone who is, I would say, numerically gifted and potentially musically gifted. There are expressive and creative skills that I don't know, they may or may not have been utilized fully. When they put themselves to work, whatever that might be, in business or whatever, there's certainly a need to um, have some kind of tangible result from their creative efforts and their talents, and that's always seen in a spatulate Apollo fingertip, very often seen on the hands of actors, but also many creatives. What I do find fascinating is that the fate line is, the formation of it is very different to that of the right hand. Notice how on the right hand it comes from lunar, just about sort of central lower Mars as well as lunar, and it's sort of hinting at Pluto. But then when we look at the left hand, notice how the fate line comes from underneath Venus, and it's adjacent with the lifeline. It's following their domestic sphere. It's influenced by family, by their parents. This person's parents decided for them what they would do in life. This is the left hand, so it shows what's internal. It shows the cards we've been dealt. It shows what's inherent, what we've inherited, and our thoughts and feelings. Notice this fate line. The I don't want to say fragmentation, but it is certainly overlapping. There's a threatening of its development in the early years. This really shows how this person's purpose, their path in life, has been adjusted and jarred by the events that they've been through. And we can see these events here, and just how jarring and impactful these events have been on their life. And, I would say early teens, there is significant development here, a change, a complete shift in terms of what it is that they want to do, and this finality of you know carving a career for themselves, a career path, a purpose in life, what it is that they should be doing, their destiny, so to speak, is fully um, activated, merging here, an action. I find it fascinating that there is something of a loyalty line that's driving towards this exact moment, and it looks to, in some way, pull the fates apart, pull this destiny apart. And this loyalty line is coming from, or, it looks as though it's influenced by the family ring, which has a square on it. So, what I'm picking up on is an event that's close to home that jarred and affected the family, impacted the family unit in a way that forever changed this person's destiny. And I would say that this occurred 15, something like that. And we can see at this exact age, um, maybe 14 or so, um, an ambition line rises out from this highly impactful and deeply, um, I mean, painful even, even the heart line, even the person's emotions are reaching down towards the life and the mind at this time. And we can see a clear kind of need to rise out from this, to change who they are as a person because of this powerful and um, destructive event. There's a need to protect the family at this time. This loyalty towards the family is strong. And as I say, this person's family, their parents decided for them what it is they wanted to do. They they had an idea for this person as to what they should be doing with their life, and it might be something like, you will work in the family business, or you will be a doctor, or and this person at some point, in some way, 15, I would say, in some way, said, "This is actually who I am, and this is actually what I'm going to do. Don't want to disappoint you because I'm loyal to you, and I I love you and appreciate you and what you've done, and I'm never going to forget my roots, but this is who I am." And the reasons why I'm coming to that conclusion is because look at the fate line on the right hand. It's a completely different area altogether. The right hand shows us what's external, the environmental and the practical and the physical. This person has made of what they've been given a very different life. We can see that a fate line coming from the lunar mount not only signifies something of a change, waxing and waning of the career. There are fluctuations in a person's fortune with whenever we see a fate line coming from lunar, because it shows a person's career around an audience potentially, and we rely on our audience, and our audience is fickle. If they love us, then we make money, and if all of a sudden they change their mind, well, we're not going to, and so we rely on the whims, I suppose, of those who we are working for. Initially, I was in two minds about this person's career because of the practicality I see, and because they're a composite hand, and actually it's a very difficult read because of this, and also because career lines that start this close to central Mars also are seen on the hands of doctors and people who are physically, practically helping. And that's the squareness of this person's palm as well. So I wouldn't be all that surprised if this person is in a career where they are helping others, or at least that's what they want to do. That's what they're working towards. And when I look at the life and heartline on the right hand in that event that I've already spoken about, um, it shows up a bit differently here. Practically speaking, physically, environmentally, this person was affected by this event in a very different way for a different amount of time. Um, Internally, I think they managed to adjust and deal with it. Again, flexibility, adaptability. This person is a survivor. Their environment was affected for a longer period of time. I think they were able to adjust internally. I'd say level-headed individual, a planner. They were able to adapt and say, no, this is what I'm going to do, and really made a plan. But their environment didn't change until they were potentially 20, and you can see physically their ambition line here. So this is actually where they were able to um, step outside of this scenario. That ambition line here is um, fulfilled, and we can see that by the way the head and the lifeline break away from each other at this time. This person claims their independence at this time. I wonder if there may well have been some very strong family commitments at home this person was tied to until they were able to finally say, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, this is my path in life. And that's suggested by here, that's shown by this. And you can see, just a little bit before that, again, the heart line here, on the right hand points towards the life and the headline at this time, and it's really early on in life for this person, early teens, the trauma this person's gone through. Something I find very interesting on their lifeline, just on the inside of it, created out of the formation of a Mars line, as well as some influences um, from the inner, from this domestic sphere. We have a formation of a square here on the inside of the lifeline, and it's at the age of 30. Around about the age of 30, I would say right up to 35, maybe 36. There's a period here of isolation from society for about a 5 or 6 year period from the age of 30 onwards. We can see it here on the left hand as well. Shows up a little bit differently on the left hand because it's more impactive environmentally than it is, psychologically. And we could see that after this time, this person's career, their destiny, their path in life is not as strong. It's not as meaningful. It's not as satisfactory. The way at least they feel about their chosen sort of career. So I think um, there's some negative feelings about their career at this time. But if we look at the right hand, there's a lot more positivity about the career. It's certainly not straightforward. There's certainly obstacles. There's certainly hard work, and they're probably giving it their all and not quite getting enough back. Now, this person is 42, and something I find interesting, and I've only just really kind of come to this conclusion now, is this right here. And a lot of amateur palmists would say this is a mystic cross. It's not a mystic cross because it's not isolated. It's in fact the fate line that is converged by something of I would say an influence from a relationship. Now, the way in which we do this is by trying to determine where this line is coming from. If it's stronger at the headline and rises up and becomes to kind of, you know, thin out, if you like, then we know that it's in fact an effort, a mental effort to work to strive towards all things mercurial, which could be business or academia, learning. But look at this marriage line and look at how it's just faintly connected to this line. And it's stopping, it's an obstruction of this person's path in life. Marriage line that does this, that crosses the heart line, it shows how is the potential for divorce at this age, which is, I believe, at the age of about 40. So I think 2 years ago, this person may well have gone through a divorce. Let me just, what I'm trying to do here is corroborate my prediction with on the left hand. Now, notice this same marriage line is curving downwards. A marriage line that curves downwards shows how the relationship itself is weighing down on us, and it points towards this right here. And again, the heart line. This is the person's emotions are reaching towards their their mind, their sense of logic, and mental sort of clarity to get through this time. And again, this looks to strike at this person's um, ability to pursue and strive towards their goals, their purpose. And again, there's a more of a sort of faintness after this time. In fact, the fate line is almost kind of non-existent on the left hand, it seems, after this time. The good news is, they're still earning money. And in fact, there is certainly possibility for a lot of positivity ahead. And the reason why I say that is because overall, this person's fate line is not clear. In other words, their destiny is much more in their own hands than they potentially realize. And this is a really positive sign because they've done it once before and they have that power to do it again to carve their own destiny. Now, I mentioned earlier on about the numerology of this person and their birthday. I've also looked at the numerology of their actual name as well. I'm going to get around to explaining the house purchase possibility shortly. But their birthday equals the number 5, and this is a highly magical number, it's a highly powerful number. When a person's date of birth equals the number 5, it suggests someone who is ultimately supremely magically powerful. But in terms of character, the number 5 is associated with people who are very fluid and adaptable survivors. Pretty much everything I've already said about this person in that we can see in their palm. That the blows that fate deals them in life doesn't affect their character. They get back up again with this kind of vibrancy and uh, springy kind of nature. That again, that their um, eclectic fingertips show us. And actually, in some way, their strong, sort of flexible, charismatic personality is at odds really with their altogether sort of practical um, elements about them as well. So there's a kind of that, and this is what makes them that mixed hand, that composite hand. There's an oddball kind of duality about this person, which is why they don't really feel like they fit in, because they don't really feel like they fit in within themselves. There's certainly something of spontaneity about this person. They're not reckless, but they are quite prone to, um, you know, jumping from one idea to the next and making money fairly quickly, and probably losing it just as quickly as well. But they get back up again. And again, it's that adaptability. They are a born survivor. Their number suggests pretty much everything I've already said about them, that the hands say about them. I find that really interesting. My advice for people of the number 5 is to hold back opinions and judgment. Otherwise, they might suffer from stupidity and stubborn thinking from others. Others might well have some interaction or um, way of obstructing their success. One thing I did notice about their birth date is there are lots of ones in it. 1 and 9, that makes 10. 1, 1 and 9, again, 8 and 2. There's lots of ones, recurring ones, and even their first name equals 28. The compound number again equals 1 overall because it's 2 plus 8 obviously makes 10, which overall is the Wheel of Fortune, but as a singular number, it's obviously number 1. Again, ones are incredibly powerful, and if we see enough ones in our name, then we start to strike on something incredibly lucky. Incredibly. Elon Musk, his name is like just nothing but ones. And the only thing, funnily enough, that's drawing this person back in terms of numerology with their name is their surname, their family name. And it's a really weird piece of advice I'm going to give here. Not advice so much as a suggestion. And that is if they changed their surname to add up to something in numerology that created their overall name to add up to the number 5 or 1, that in itself may well have some significant impact on their destiny in either luck or something powerfully magical. So, in terms of success and fortune, I actually advise this person changes their last name. And I'm going to email them and talk a bit more about this specifically. Um, but it's an odd one, but I strongly feel that this would somehow have quite powerful impacts on cosmically their destiny. So this would come back around to the possibility of increasing their chances of buying their own house significantly. This feels like a bit of a cop-out suggestion, at least when I hear myself say it, but I strongly feel that this would help. And the other thing I've already kind of mentioned is that they have actually quite a great deal of access to carve their own destiny and to fall into their ideas and action their many ideas into something that's quite tangible, to making money out of, as I've mentioned, um, through their efforts, physical, tangible result. They have these many ideas and they're able to make money quite quickly. Holding back judgment and opinions may well actually, in some way, enable and increase opportunities when it comes to networking and working with others. One thing I haven't mentioned, and I find this really interesting, is notice the curvature of the headline on the left hand. It's wonderfully elegant and poised in such a way that it's showing this rich imagination and a strength of creativity, whereas the right hand we see a much more level-headed, pragmatic, lateral thinker, a planner, and this headline reaches way into lunar, almost the other side of the hand, and it's just someone who's very level-headed and a table line, as was known as in Roman palmistry, someone would be expected to handle so many of life's pressures and just be able to keep a cool head at the same time. A lot of responsibilities on this person's shoulders would be expected because of this type of headline. So I feel that this person in the work setting, in life in general, on the outside, they're expected to um, be quite a structured, level-headed planner and think ahead. That there's a need here, a development of that ability to think ahead. There's a strong ability here to think ahead as well. But who they are intrinsically and inherently is someone who's much more creative. So I'm coming back again to this idea that this person has much a very different idea of themselves than others think of them. Now, I don't see any sign um, on the fate line or, any kind of sun line in terms of property and acquisition of assets, in terms of a house. But, and this is a big but, notice the wrist lines here. And one of them arches like this. And as it does, it creates something of a triangle just here. And this here is not a triangle as such. This is the lifeline breaking away and reaching right around underneath Venus. And as it does, we have something of, um, I would say, a strengthening from this reset, this wrist line, to kind of give this impression of a triangle here. It's not quite what we're seeing. So it's really difficult to interpret. And what I would say is happening here is this is the potential for acquired assets through inheritance. Um, there's support here from family in terms of material, um, finances potentially, but I would say this is more the potential for acquiring a house through inheritance. And I'm going to start to conclude here with some really interesting um, insights, and that is this just here. Notice how we have breaking away from the lifeline at this time, and at the same time we have this secondary sort of fate line rising from this time, and it's an effort line in a sense. It is potentially a secondary fate line, but I see it more as an effort line, and it's driving its way towards Apollo, because what this is doing here is saying, I'm going to create prosperity and peace and happiness and joy, success, and this is what's going to happen for me. And actually, what I think is going to happen for this person's palm as well, I think the lines are going to change. I think we're going to see strengthening. I think we're going to see something of a strength in this person's sun line, development of a sun line very soon on this person's hand, because at the age of, I would say, 55, there is a move abroad. And this move abroad may well be related to this inheritance. So I'm wondering if there's potential here for acquiring property and then renting it out or selling it off and moving away. That's a theory. That's a suggestion, because those things are certainly intertwined. There's travel, acquiring a potential here for acquiring property or at least assets by inheritance or familial sort of support. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone in the family has to die for it to happen. It could just be, okay, we're going to give you this now. Or, we decided together, or here's this. So there's strengthening of success and joy and prosperity at this time, as well as a move. And it's certainly linked towards a great possibility of acquiring an asset. And here's something else that's really interesting. You see at this time here, this little intersection, there's a travel line that points directly towards this intersection at this time. Now, it's not entirely possible for me to read any further down the line for this person, and the reason for that is because, again, this person is at a kind of, not only are they the sort of person who is much more able to carve their own destiny than others, but they're reaching a sort of crossroads in their life. I think they sort of hit one. They've just come out of one, or they're about to head into one. And that is why we don't see the clarity in the fate line that was possibly once more present in their hands, or will be in their hands. But what I do see is the potential for another relationship later on, in a few years' time, maybe about 7 years or so. It's very fickle business here, trying to judge time-wise. 5 to 7 years, I would say there's another relationship on the cards that has any kind of bearing and impact and real strength of meaning, love. So, to summarize, hold back opinions and judgments. Show people who you are and what you mean, rather than tell them. Show them your worth, because in that there's a real strength of ability in your ability to show. And as well as that, the heart line being so straight shows how you're um, emotionally impartial, someone who's very able to separate emotion from decision making, but also someone who is an incredible physical lover in terms of how you show affection. And that is through effort, through time, through spending time with someone, through spending money on someone. That's this person's love language. And really, by doing that, by showing up and showing who you are, there's a real strength in um, leading by example, by doing that, and really proving to people your point and your worth and who you are and what you mean, rather than trying to tell, show, don't tell, essentially. So one final point I'm going to make here is this little mole right here, and it's not quite the meaning of Kut Yog, but it's very close. And Kut Yog is a specific palmar marking that means a person lives positively, prosperously. It's very close with their family, strong loyalties, strong familial ties and bonds, and is supported and um, has, quite a lot of struggles in life, but bounces back time and time again, has a real strong survival instinct, and is very courageous. There's a strength of, a strong sense of courageousness about this person. And I get that anyway because of this Mars line, because of, the strength of the expanse of inner Mars here. I find it interesting that we see it just sitting outside of the lifeline, very close to this key moment and what is likely a karmic year in their life. And as I say, I believe it's about the age of 55 that things will really turn around for this person in about 7 years' time for this person. So that is everything for this reading. Thank you very much for watching, and I do hope you have enjoyed. I hope you've learned a few things in this palm reading. If you would like a palm reading like this one, please do visit my website, piscespalmist.com, and book a reading with me. If you've got any questions about this reading, please do drop a comment. Perhaps you've noticed something that I may not have picked up on, or you've interpreted things differently. If you would like to learn palmistry with me, please do join up for my level 2 membership, and you can learn regularly with me and like-minded emerging palmists as well. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.